So, I recently dealt with something no homeowner should ever have to say out loud. My farm got raided by cops. And the reason? An HOA complaint. They claimed they had authority. But the funny thing is, the only thing they actually had was a front row seat to their own arrest. Let me start from the beginning. Before we dive in, let me know where you're listening from today. It started with a nail. 6 inches of rusted steel, driven straight through a bright red notice and into the wood of my front gate like a warning shot from the paperwork police. Emergency repossession notice, HOA Mandate 14B violation, which was interesting considering I don't have an HOA. At least, I didn't used to. I pulled the paper off the gate. It came with 3 delightful surprises, a list of invented violations, including livestock containment breach, and unauthorized fencing design, a $4,700 fine, a deadline, vacate by Friday or face immediate removal. And the best part, it was signed by Karen Whitaker, President Greater Simmons Valley HOA. I don't live in Simmons Valley. I live next to Simmons Valley. But apparently, Karen decided the HOA's borders were now expandable, like imperialism, but with more beige clipboards. At first I figured it was junk, one of those scare letter scams. Until 30 minutes later, when a matte black SUV rolled up my driveway. Out stepped 2 guys, cargo pants, tactical vests. One held a clipboard, the other had a sidearm and the kind of buzz cut that screams, "I almost passed police academy." Clipboard guy took the lead. "Sir, we're here to conduct a visual inspection on behalf of the Simmons Valley HOA. I gave him the world's longest blink. "You have a warrant? Under municipal subcode, emergency protocol authorizes perimeter verification without resident consent," which was a lot of words for no. I stepped in front of him. "You're not coming near my barn with that attitude or that vest." The second guy adjusted his stance. One hand lingered just close enough to his holster to suggest a threat without actually drawing. I looked him dead in the eye. "Unless you're law enforcement or carrying a legally binding warrant, you're trespassing." Clipboard guy just smiled and pulled out a phone. "We'll be noting your resistance. This will escalate." "Oh, I hope so," I said, "because I love paperwork." As they turned to leave, I noticed something taped inside their windshield, an HOA badge, printed, laminated, crooked. I grabbed my phone and snapped photos, plate number, badge, gear, all of it. Then I posted it to the local Simmons board. Title, "New HOA cosplay unit spotted. Looks like Blackwater took over lawn care." Within minutes, the comments blew up. One neighbor posted, "Same guys knocked on my barn door last week. Said they needed to check the grain bins for health violations." Another wrote, "This isn't compliance. This is intimidation." And then came this one, from Old Man Duffy, 4 houses down. "I told you all years ago, Karen's HOA ain't a neighborhood group. It's a damn cult." I was still chuckling at that when my phone rang. Karen, no hello. Just her voice, smug, clipped, and dripping with Stepford confidence. "Mr. Callahan, I'm calling to confirm that you've received the formal notice." "You mean the one illegally nailed to my gate?" Nailed is a harsh term, secured for visibility, and it's not illegal under the new emergency expansion guidelines. Which guidelines? The ones we voted on last quarter. Funny, I don't recall being invited to that meeting. It was for residents of Simmons Valley. I'm not in Simmons Valley. You are now. Click. That night, I noticed something else. Orange flags, survey markers, lining the edge of my north field. Brand new. I hadn't put them there. And judging by the fact that my goats were actively chewing on 2 of them, I don't think they were HOA approved. I yanked one out of the ground. Plastic, numbered, coordinates scrawled in black Sharpie. They weren't just bluffing, they were mapping. Next morning, I went into town to file a formal report for attempted impersonation of law enforcement. The woman at the county office raised an eyebrow when she read the complaint. "We've had a few of these." "How many is a few?" 11, you're 12. I asked if anything had been done. She shook her head. "Most people just pay the fine and hope they go away." "I'm not most people." "No, you're not." Then she handed me a sticky note. "You should talk to this guy." I looked down. Sheriff Luke Callahan, my brother. I called him that night, read him the letter, told him about the fake cops and the clipboard that looked like it came from a high school AV club. He went silent, then said, "You're not the first." I figured, "But your case is different. It's not just about fines or fences." "What is it then?" "It's about control and what they're planning next." I waited. "I can't talk over the phone. Just hold the line." That's when it clicked. This wasn't some overreaching HOA board on Facebook. This was something bigger, coordinated, planned, and my land was step one. But what Luke didn't say that night was that Karen had already tried this stunt before. Different target, same script, and that guy, gone. 2 weeks after his eviction, his land was donated to the HOA for community use. Except now, it's a private retreat, and Karen owns it. It didn't start with sirens. It started with a megaphone. "This is the compliance division of the Simmons Valley HOA. Step outside immediately." That's what I heard at 6:42 a.m. while pouring coffee and watching my goats headbutt each other over an empty feed bucket. I thought maybe I was dreaming. Then I saw the flash of lights on my front gate. Amber, flashing, way too dramatic for someone who'd never even made eye contact with a real badge. I stepped out onto the porch in a t-shirt that said, "Fence me in, I dare you," and found 4 black trucks idling at the end of my gravel road. No plates, just stenciled numbers. And taped across the side of each one, Civic Enforcement, Simmons Valley Compliance Division. 6 people climbed out, full khaki gear, steel-toe boots, belts with radios. One guy had what looked like a drone remote. Another had a laminated folder tucked under one arm like it was a badge. And then, like a villain cue from a bad soap opera, Karen stepped out of the lead truck. Clipboard, sunglasses, a windbreaker that probably cost more than my tractor. "Good morning," she said, smiling like this was a wellness check and not a fake raid. "We're here to initiate Phase 2 of your compliance review." I sipped my coffee. "Did Phase 1 get lost in the mail?" "You received proper notice. You chose not to respond. We are now authorized to inspect and seize any structure or material in breach of code." "Which code?" "Simmons Valley's Extended Covenant Article C. There's no such thing. It was ratified at the last board meeting. There is no board." "There is now." She turned to her goons and gave a nod. They moved with military precision, or at least YouTube military. 2 peeled off toward the barn, 1 raised a drone. Another started walking the fence line like he was doing recon. That's when I stepped off my porch, one hand in my hoodie pocket, calm, controlled. They stopped like someone had hit pause. "Sir," one said, "please don't interfere." "Why? Planning to arrest me for walking on my own land?" "We're here under community authority." "Number? You're here playing dress-up in khakis." Karen kept her smile but stepped forward. "We can do this peacefully. Or escalate. Your choice." I laughed. "You brought 6 rent-a-troopers and a drone to inspect a barn. It's not just the barn, it's the unauthorized fencing, the livestock zone violations, and the unregistered utility hookup." "Funny," I said, "because the barn's been here for 30 years, the goats were born on site, and the utility hookups county issued. Want to see the paperwork?" "We'll determine that for ourselves." "No, you won't." That's when she waved 2 of them forward. They made it 6 steps. Then I whistled, loud. The goats bleated in unison, chaos-loving creatures that they are, and began sprinting toward the barn. One of the guys flinched. "What the hell?" "They don't like strangers," I said, "especially ones carrying radios." Karen held up her phone and started recording. "Just another example of escalating hostility from non-compliant residents. We're documenting all of this." I gave the camera a smile. "Smile harder, Karen. That footage is going to look real good subpoenaed." Before anyone could argue, another car pulled up. This time, a marked sheriff's cruiser. Deputy Ramirez stepped out, calm, confident, fully legit. "Everything all right here?" Karen turned. "We're in the middle of an HOA enforcement operation. Please stand down." Ramirez cocked an eyebrow. "You're what?" "These residents are in violation of multiple codes. We're executing a legal inspection." He turned to me. "Did you invite these folks?" "Nope." "Do you consent to this inspection?" "Absolutely not." "Then they're trespassing." He turned back to Karen. "Ma'am, you and your unit need to vacate immediately. And that drone? It's illegal to fly over private agricultural property without clearance." Karen's eye twitched. "This is outrageous." "Number? This is the law." She clenched her jaw, then leaned in just for me to hear. "I hope your niece enjoys applying for scholarships from an off-grid property with multiple violations." My blood ran cold. I didn't show it. But in that moment, I wanted her gone. All the way gone. They started backing off, slowly, in formation. But as the last truck pulled away, I saw one of the younger squad guys hesitate. He looked at the barn, then at me. And for half a second, his expression cracked. Regret, uncertainty, I'll never know. Because Karen barked at him and he turned away. "There's always one," I muttered. "The recruit with a conscience." I waited 5 minutes, then walked to the barn, ran my hand along the old siding. My dad built it with his own hands. Reclaimed pine, screws from the mill's scrap heap. He called it the Freedom Box. Said it'd stand longer than any rule book. Now? It had a drone's lens pointed right at it. That night, Luke showed up at the back fence. No uniform, no warning, just a nod and a six-pack. He sat on the porch swing like we were kids again. That was textbook Karen, full show, all smoke. "Then why does it feel like it's working?" He cracked a beer. "Because you're not just a target, you're a headline. If she takes you down, the rest fold." She threatened my niece. "Then she's scared." I asked him how many others. 3 counties, maybe 4. People signing over land to avoid lawsuits they can't afford. All buried in legalese and HOA policy no one voted on. "She's not smart enough to build this." She didn't, but she is ruthless enough to run it. He stood. "I'll be in position, but I can't interfere unless she crosses a line." "She already has." "Then get proof, clean, solid, and keep your head on straight." "I'm wired up 6 different ways." "Good, because what's coming next?" It's not a clipboard and a fine. But while I was bracing for another knock at the gate, I didn't see the one already inside it. Because someone I trusted was feeding her everything, and her next move nearly burned this place to the ground. It started with little things, the things that became annoying real quick. Tools moved, a gate unlatched, fence wire loose where it should have been taut. One of the goats, Maggie, wandered into the road, chewing a survey flag like it owed her money. I brushed it off. Farms are messy, goats are chaotic neutral at best. But then the power cut out. Twice. Not a storm. No outages reported, just blackouts. And every time, it happened when the barn cameras were uploading footage to cloud storage. Now that caught my attention. The final straw came when the pasture fence shorted during a clear night, right after I'd repaired it. Clean slice across the copper line. No bite marks, no rust, just wire, severed, intentional. Someone wasn't breaking in. They were already inside. I checked the logs, reviewed motion sensors. Every glitch happened during shifts covered by one guy, Darren, tall, soft-spoken, and newly hired. He'd come recommended from a neighboring property. Always on time, never talked much. But lately, he'd been asking questions, not about livestock, about systems. "Where's the backup generator? You got a backup to the backup? You ever considered solar redundancy?" Which sounded helpful, until I noticed him walking around with his phone at chest height, screen glowing, camera up, not forward, upper, toward the barn loft window, right where I keep the safe. So I tested him. I staged a decoy shed with a binder labeled Property Transfer Options, Confidential, filled it with blank paper, left it unlocked. 3 days later, it was gone. I didn't confront him, not yet. I waited and watched. And at 11:17 p.m. on a Thursday, the well cam pinged motion. I pulled up the live feed. There he was, hoodie up, flashlight in one hand, a black messenger bag over one shoulder, creeping across my property like it owed him rent. I grabbed the one thing I knew I'd need and stepped into the cold. I caught him near the pump house. "Forgot to clock out?" He spun, dropped the flashlight, dropped the bag, ran. I didn't think, I chased. We tore through the side pasture, past the south gate, hoofprints still fresh in the mud. He was fast, but he didn't know the land like I did. He made it halfway to the woods before he tripped on an irrigation pipe and ate dirt. I was on him before he could scramble up. "Let's talk." "It's not what it looks like." "Then you better say something smart in the next 10 seconds. He paused, And to my surprise, he didn't beg. He snapped. "You think you're some kind of hero? Sitting on stolen land, barking orders like you're better than the rest of us?" Karen told me what this place really is. Told me your family rigged the original land deal, that this was always supposed to go back to the community. I stared at him. "You mean Karen, the HOA president, told you my dad was a land thief?" She showed me the documents. "She also told you to cut my fence?" "She said you wouldn't listen, that you were a risk." He tried to stand. I shoved him back down. "So you were what? Doing the community a favor?" "They were going to take it anyway. I made it faster." He opened the bag. Inside, a burner phone, a tablet, a hand-sketched map of my property with notes in red ink, trigger points, fence cam blind spot, well access, unguarded, and one phrase underlined twice: evacuation trigger, November 4th. I looked at the date. That was in 2 days. I turned on the tablet. It auto-launched to a folder titled Phase 3, Callahan. Inside, surveillance photos, power usage charts, camera stills from angles I'd never installed, and a PDF labeled Priority Report, Subject Non-Compliant, Acceleration Recommended. Luke and I read it later that night. It included phrases like narrative control slipping. Subject is demonstrating resistance to de-escalation attempts. Consider legal civil order filing under expanded HOA clause. And at the bottom, authorization K. Whitaker. No more guessing. Karen wasn't reacting. She was running the whole play. Then came the documents. Forged ones, property transfer forms, a quitclaim deed, my name on a signature line I'd never touched, filed with the county, stamped, processed, and listed under co-ownership with an entity called Mason Ridge Holdings. I opened the safe in the loft and pulled out the real land deed, thick yellowed paper with my father's signature, laid it side by side with the forgery. They matched, almost perfectly. Same layout, same ink, same file number, except for one thing. Mine had a wet signature. The forgery, scanned, lifted, pasted, filed weeks ago. "She's trying to sell the property out from under you," Luke said, "to a shell developer she's tied to." "And the county signed off?" "At least one official did, probably more." "This is fraud. This is theft." Later that night, I sat in the barn, same bench where my dad used to read the paper, drinking black coffee from a tin mug with a bent handle. I pulled out the old folder he left me when he passed, full of receipts, surveys, old maps, and one final record. A rejected offer. Karen Whitaker. She'd tried to buy our land 3 decades ago, got denied, and now she was using forged papers and corrupted county officials to finish what she started. "She's been coming for this place since before I could drive," I said. Luke nodded. "And now she's got signatures." "Not for long. Because that forged deed, it wasn't the end, it was the trigger. The contract Karen filed didn't just transfer interest, it granted construction rights. And what she planned to build wouldn't just wipe out my farm, it would erase every trace that I was ever here. I always thought my dad was a little nuts. Not in a bad way, just prepper adjacent. The man had firewood stacked like he expected a second ice age and kept 6 sets of spare keys buried in marked coffee cans around the property. "Security through confusion," he used to say. "If they don't know where the line is, they can't cross it." Turns out, he wasn't paranoid. He was right. The day after we uncovered the forged deed, I opened the old floorboards at the back of the barn, pulled out a steel lockbox labeled in faded red Sharpie, "Mule Dust." A phrase that meant nothing to anyone but me. That was our code. A joke from when I was 9 and asked him what eminent domain meant. It means the government thinks your land's worth more to them than to you. So they call it progress and you call it theft. Inside the box, receipts, topo maps, permits, carbon copies of letters dating back to the 80s, and one thick spiral notebook titled Land Disputes Settled and Unsettled. He'd logged every challenge, every complaint, every attempt to rezone Simmons Valley, and one name kept showing up in red pen, Karen Whitaker. I flipped to a section dated February 1991. Inside was a typed proposal for a luxury subdivision, tennis courts, gated access, clubhouse with a fitness studio, Filed by Karen back when she was just some junior agent at a development firm. Stamped denied in big block letters. Zoning conflict, environmental overlap, structural impact, too high. In his own handwriting, my dad had circled her name. She'll try again, not with a company, with paper. And suddenly, it clicked. This wasn't just power. This was personal. I remembered something. A flash. A scene from childhood I didn't even realize was still there. Karen at the front gate. I was 9, sitting on the porch with my legs swinging off the step. She wore a blazer, hair up, clipboard in hand, like she already owned the county. My dad met her halfway down the drive. "Mr. Callahan," she'd said, "I think we got off on the wrong foot." "You don't get a second foot if you use the first one to kick down the door," he said. She smiled like it didn't touch her. "This property could be worth triple what it is now. You'd be doing the community a service." He didn't blink. The answer's still no. She didn't yell, didn't argue, just nodded, turned, and walked off. But her face? That wasn't the face of someone defeated. It was the face of someone who'd wait 30 years to win. Back in the barn, Luke and I laid every document out on the floor, side by side with the forged deed Darren had lifted. We found zoning overlays that had been altered, easement rights marked abandoned, stamps from the county office that didn't match the real ones. But the gold mine? A development contract between Mason Ridge Holdings and a silent fund called Emergent Valley Growth Trust. The contract called my farm, Phase 1 Redevelopment Opportunity Zone, signed by Karen, co-signed by Zachary Lorne, county zoning chief, and the same man who told me 2 weeks ago over coffee. "I hope you never sell this place. There's something sacred about land with history." Now he was trying to erase it. Luke muttered something under his breath and pulled out his phone. "This isn't just fraud anymore." "Then what is it?" "Strategic acquisition, built on intimidation and forgery." "How far does it go?" "Far enough to keep me up at night." Later that night, I opened my dad's old cassette player. The tape was labeled Town Hall, February 1991. It was scratchy, but clear enough. "This proposal benefits everyone," Karen said. "We need housing, infrastructure, progress." "You mean concrete," my dad replied, "and control. You're holding back the future. I'm protecting the present. You're making this personal. Only because you made it first." Silence. Then someone clapped, and the tape ended. Luke returned with a manila folder. Inside, leaked HOA minutes. Not from this year, from last. That's how long this had been planned. One section read, "Monitor subjects' movements. Begin mail reroute strategy. Secure barn as future equipment site. Spin narrative mental instability if resistance escalates." Beneath it, contingency plan, civil enforcement, fake law enforcement badge protocol. She had a plan for everything. And still, she panicked. Because the moment I printed every file, mailed it to 3 local papers, and dropped a copy on her porch with a note that said, "Still not yours," she cracked. Posted a video online. Standing in front of her HOA banner, hair immaculate, voice shaking. "Certain individuals have spread false claims about me in this community. I have never engaged in unlawful activity. This is harassment, misinformation. I demand it stop." The comments section was unkind. "Blink twice if you're lying." "Lady, nobody believes you didn't forge something. You look forged." "Let me guess. HOA stands for Harass Our Agriculture." The video was pulled in 3 hours, but I archived it. Back in the barn, I found one more note from my dad. Tucked in the back of the notebook, circled in red, "They can only take it if they can prove you were never supposed to have it." Under that, a map with a parcel line Karen had crossed. And the man who owned that strip of land wasn't just a neighbor, he was a lawyer. And he'd been waiting for Karen to screw up, which meant the next time she stepped foot past that boundary, she wouldn't just be trespassing, she'd be triggering a legal takedown, one she'd never see coming. It started like a storm before sunrise. Not loud, not sudden, just pressure, a shift in the air, the kind that made the dogs restless and the wind change direction for no good reason. And me? I didn't flinch, because for once, I was ready. The barn was wired. Every inch of the perimeter was under surveillance, streamed to an encrypted off-site server, and backed up 6 ways. Luke had his off-duty deputies stationed 2 fields over, watching the live feed with their eyes and 2 sets of binoculars. And I had something else waiting in the barn. A little surprise I called Plan B, East Mode. At 9:04 a.m., it began. 5 SUVs black, caked in dust, fast. They didn't pull up polite. They invaded, skidded into my front drive like they were kicking down the gate of a compound. Karen stepped out first, a beige blazer, dark sunglasses, and the expression of someone who still thought she had leverage. She had backup, 8 fake compliance officers with radio earpieces, zip ties, and clipboards they held like weapons. "Mr. Callahan," she said, loud enough for the valley to hear, "you've left us no choice." She held up a document like it was a royal decree. "Under emergency HOA directive, this property is hereby placed under administrative hold pending full inspection." "Looks impressive," I said, "but unless it's signed by a judge, it's just decorative garbage." "You're in violation. Number, you're in denial." She nodded at her crew. That's when 2 of them started for the south gate. Another walked toward the barn. One had a crowbar, another wore a body cam, like this was a training video for how not to get sued into the Stone Age. "Everything you're doing," I said, "is being recorded." They paused. 5 cameras, 2 deputies watching live, a county lawyer reviewing the feed, so please, keep going. Karen's jaw tightened. She tried to hold composure. "We have jurisdiction." "No, you have delusions. We are acting on behalf of the community." "Which part? The part suing you or the part filming this disaster?" That's when she gave the order. "Proceed." And one of her people, tall, 20-something, probably didn't even know what easement meant, stepped toward the barn and touched the door. Bad move. Plan B activated, motion sensors triggered, spotlights snapped on, sirens flared. Then a deep voice blasted through speakers across the property. "This is Sheriff Callahan. You are now trespassing on private property under investigation. Step away from the building immediately." Karen flinched. 2 of her crew stumbled back. The guy with the crowbar dropped it. One of them turned to her, whispering something I couldn't hear. Another muttered into his walkie. "She said we had clearance. She said we were covered." Karen ignored them. That was her first mistake. The second was not looking behind her. From the rear pasture, Don Wallace walked forward. Wide-brimmed hat, clean boots, thick file in hand. Karen barely noticed until he was 5 feet away. "Ms. Whitaker," he said, "you've crossed onto my land. This is part of the Simmons Valley zoning tract. Number that tract stops 23 feet west. This is private land. And this," he held up the file, "is a cease and desist order, effective now." Karen tried to laugh. "This is a community enforcement action." Don didn't blink. "That's funny, because the community just filed a class action lawsuit against your organization for fraud, harassment, and illegal property seizure." He leaned in. "And the judge who overturned your hold, she lives 2 blocks from me." Karen's face fell, not all at once, bit by bit, the veneer cracking. First the eyes, then the mouth, then the silence. And then, "You'll regret this." I stepped forward. "Already did. Back in 1991, when we offered you lemonade." That's when the real law showed up. 4 county cruisers, sirens silent, doors synchronized. Luke walked out of the lead car like he'd been waiting for this scene his whole life. "Everyone hands free," he said. "Let's keep this clean." Karen didn't move, so he held up a document. Signed warrant, fraud, forgery, unlawful impersonation of law enforcement, civil code violations. "You can't arrest me," she said. "That's adorable," Luke said. "But yes, I can." They cuffed her. Not dramatic, no screaming, no struggle, just defeat, heavy, hollow, final. The rest of her crew folded like lawn chairs in a hurricane. One tried to run, made it 10 feet. One sat down on the gravel and asked, "Can I still qualify as a whistleblower?" Luke nodded. "If you talk fast." The crowd gathered fast. Neighbors who'd been too scared to speak started clapping. Someone filmed from a drone. Another guy brought his teenage daughter who yelled, "That's the lady who tried to fine us for putting up Halloween lights." Karen didn't look at them, but they looked at her. Like finally, the neighborhood monster was real, and she was in cuffs. Mrs. Delaney rolled up in a golf cart, parked at the gate, and raised a sweet tea glass like it was a champagne toast. "Told you," she said. Woman's HOA Hitler with a hyphenated last name. But even with Karen down, something still itched at the back of my brain. Because as Luke was loading evidence bags, his deputy called over. "Hey, you need to see this." A tablet, recovered from Karen's SUV. One email, no sender, no body, no name. Just a subject line, reassignment, pilot zone, Midwest beta. And coordinates, not mine, somewhere else. So, while Karen was going down for everything she'd built, she wasn't the architect, she was just the pilot program. And what those coordinates led to? That was someone else's land, someone who hadn't fought back yet. They took Karen away just after noon. No sunglasses, no clipboard, no fake vest, just handcuffs. And the look of someone who'd finally realized her script had run out of pages. She didn't cry, but her silence was louder than any meltdown could have been. Her mugshot made the local paper by sunset. Channel 9 ran the footage twice. By morning, it had 80,000 shares on social media with headlines like, "HOA president cuffed for fake raid, gets served by real sheriff, her victim's brother." My face was pixelated. Hers wasn't. The HOA site went offline that night. The board of directors page now leads to a 404. And someone in town, I still don't know who, started printing bumper stickers that said, "Karen isn't law." A high school kid made t-shirts with her mugshot and the caption, "Violation, arrogance, Section 8, para, stupid." Her empire crumbled from the inside. 6 of her officers flipped. 3 county employees were suspended for rubber stamping fake permits. Zachary Lorne resigned to focus on family. Luke said the state DA is investigating, quietly, thoroughly. But that wasn't what kept me up at night. What did? That email. Reassignment, pilot zone, Midwest beta. No sender, no body, just coordinates. 2 counties over. That's where I found Grace Harlow. She owned a small ranch, newer, cleaner. She met me at the gate with a rake in one hand and no time for nonsense. "If you're here about code enforcement..." "Not exactly," I said. "I'm here about Karen." I showed her a copy of my forged deed. She went pale, disappeared into her shed, and came back with a manila envelope. Inside was a letter. HOA header, same wording as mine. Phase 1 redevelopment opportunity zone. The name on the bottom wasn't Karen's, but it was someone we'd seen before. Mason Ridge Holdings. She was next. Maybe already targeted. Maybe already being watched. We shared everything. Files, footage, testimonies. Within 2 weeks, Grace filed an injunction with help from the state attorney's office. 3 weeks later, the HOA representing her community went silent. She sent me a photo of her land at sunrise with a note that read, "Still standing, still mine." Then came the others, 4 more landowners in 3 states. Different names, different HOAs, same threat, same development group, same blueprint. This wasn't Karen's plan, it was a playbook. And Karen, she was just running Chapter 1. I handed everything over to a contact in the state AG's office. They didn't make promises, they asked for silence. But the message was clear. We're not just investigating this HOA, we're looking at the network behind them. The ranch stayed mine. Luke helped me reinforce the boundaries. I rebuilt the barn door, sanded the porch steps, upgraded the cameras. The goats went back to being the most dangerous thing on the property. But I didn't go back to who I was before. I walked the fence every morning, not just to check the lines, but to remember. That power doesn't always come in uniforms. Sometimes it comes with clipboards and smiles and forged signatures. And if you don't pay attention, it erases you, quietly, legally. Some neighbors still wave, some still don't. But Mrs. Delaney dropped off pickles and a note. Next time, run for mayor, or sheriff, or God. I didn't run, I built, I prepared, and I paid attention. A month after Karen's arrest, a black envelope showed up at my gate. No return address, no note. Just a wax seal and a printed card inside. One symbol, a triangle, overlaid with a stylized house. Below it, a set of new coordinates. I held it for hours, thought about burning it, thought about driving there. Instead, I logged the data, stored it in the same lockbox where my dad kept mule dust. Because someday someone else might need it. And if they do, they won't be starting from scratch. Final reflection. I used to think the law was a wall, thick, permanent, but it's not. It's paper, and paper only holds up until someone decides to light a match. So, if you think Karen was the end of the story, you haven't seen the rest of the map, because that email, that wasn't a glitch. It was a starting point, and someone out there just circled the next zone.